Okay, there's not a lot to talk about in the gaming world, so I decided that I'm just gonna talk about, Batman and Spider-Man, who has better games, because I believe that was a question that someone asked me and they wanted me to make a video about it. So here it is. Um, it really depends on what decade you look at, because like each decade, like one shine more than the other. Like you look at the 90s, like during like the very first part of the decade, a lot of people would say that Batman shined a little bit more because of like his movies. He was more mainly on the movie scene, while Spider-Man was just like relegated to just being on cartoons and animated series. And both the movies that Batman were a part of and the animated series that Spider-Man was a part of was pretty cool. But and in terms of video games, it's kind of a tough pick, because like Batman's video games, like during the start of the decade, was good. By the time we got towards the end of the decade, they weren't as good. And then you look at the start of the 2000s decade, it seemed like Spider-Man had better video games. Like you look at the two Spider-Man games for the PS1 that came out in 2000 and 2001. Um, like a lot of people were talking about those games, and they ended up being like big attractions on the PS1 console. And this is like during a time period where like superhero video games were not as popular as they are nowadays, because back in like the early 2000s, they weren't selling as much as the Spider-Man game for like the PS4 or Batman Arkham City or anything like that. And then you look at the like the 2000s decade in general, we got the three Spider-Man movies, Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3 between 2002 and 2007. But a lot of people say that Spider-Man 2 for the PS2 is probably like the best Spider-Man video game out of the trilogy. And they would say that it's the best movie as well, because, if you like the movie, then you're most likely going to, enjoy the video game as well. But but around the mid part of the 2000s decade, I feel like Batman started to like slowly become more popular, because you had Batman Begins, which was released back in 2005, and you had the game that came out as well. And I feel like both the film and the game is really underrated. And that was actually the true start of the Dark Knight trilogy, and that's something that a lot of people don't know, because they focus more on Batman Dark Knight from 2008, because that was such a damn good movie. And a lot of people enjoyed every aspect about it, like the realism, the darkness, the the way it was filmed, the way it was directed. There was just a lot of things that people feel that really stood out in that particular movie, opposed to all the other movies. I mean, that movie made like the older Batman movies feel like child's play, but it is what it is. And and I honestly feel like the success in the movies is one of the things that led to the Batman Arkham series becoming so popular, because the Batman Arkham series started back in 2009, if I'm not mistaken, and Batman Arkham Asylum, I think, did over like 4.3 million in sales. And then you look at Batman Arkham City, um, that game did over like 12 mil in sales. And then Batman Arkham Knight from 2015 did over like 5 mil in sales. And then you look at Lego Batman, that had did like 11 mil in terms of sales. And yeah, like during like the teens decade, for the most part, or at least during the first half of the decade, Batman had like shined a lot. And he was probably like the most popular superhero in the gaming genre. But then you look at like 2018, and you look at like Spider-Man, and you look at you look at the Spider-Man game from PS4. I mean, it's one of the best-selling video games of its generation, and that's something that I'm pretty sure a lot of people did not expect, because it was released solely for that console, and nothing else. I mean, it wasn't backwards compatible with the PlayStation 3 or anything like that. And Spider-Man still managed to basically sell as much as it did. So, like, it really depends on what decade, you really look at in terms of, who had better games, because I feel like the teens decade, because it's more recent, it's more accurate in terms of like how popular each superhero is. And when you look at like the teens decade, I feel like in terms of like quantity, maybe Batman had more games that got mainstream attention, but then you look at Spider-Man, he had a game that like sold more than the two Batman games did separately. So, I mean, it's kind of a tough call, and it really depends on like who you're a fan of. Are you a fan of DC or you're a fan of Marvel? Because I know DC appeals more to an adult audience, and Marvel appeals more to children because Marvel is owned by Disney, and there's a lot of old school Marvel fans who really don't like that. But you know um, because Spider-Man is owned by Marvel, and Marvel's owned by Disney, obviously, Marvel has a wider fan base because they cater to just about everyone, like children, adults. Just about everyone knows who Spider-Man is. Everyone knows who Batman is. But DC is clearly more for adults. And if you don't believe me, just look at the Harley Quinn series. It's M-rated, and a lot of people like it. But the thing is, I'm not sure that it has the type of exposure that I don't know that Spider-Man, shows or Spider-Man movies has or anything like that. So um it really depends on what your taste is, because you look at like two of the best superhero movies, or like sorry, the two of the best superhero video games of the teens decade. You think about Batman Arkham City, and you think about Spider-Man for the PS4. In terms of like quantity, who has better video games? Um, That's kind of tough. I would probably give the slight edge to Batman, but obviously Spider-Man, had the game of the past decade that had the most success, and I feel like it's something that people can still enjoy to this day. We're supposed to be getting Marvel Spider-Man 2 on October 20th, I believe. And once that game comes out, I wouldn't be surprised if it surpassed the Spider-Man game from 2018, because we saw a ton of things about it that just look very intriguing. And some people are probably bummed about the fact that they're going back with Spider-Man with the black suit and all that, but it is what it is. I mean, I know they tried that in Spider-Man 3 movie, but looking at it in Marvel Spider-Man 2, it looks intriguing this time around. Um, Also, like knowing that Craven the Hunter and Venom's going to be in this, I do feel that the story for Marvel Spider-Man 2 is going to be awesome, and it's going to be basically a game that's going to have the potential to have, um, I guess, to have that type of lasting appeal to it years after it's released. It's going to be one of those games that people look back a decade from now and have nothing but good things to say about it. But yeah, I feel like superhero video games has evolved a lot, and I don't think people are going to be necessarily looking for like quantity in terms of like what better games. It's just which games like stood the test of time after they were released.